The Demons That Divide America is an intense story written by Dr. Naomi Roberson that tells about the raw, uncut truth concerning racism and greed in America. To find out how you can receive a copy of this book, call us at 312-458-9812. Hi, I'm Dr. Naomi Roberson, and we're celebrating 25 years on the air. Now, I know you're going to enjoy this program, and we're going to present a special edition of the Naomi Roberson Show. Stay tuned. I know you're going to enjoy the program. You witnessed the death of both of your parents, but I understand it was your father first.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, actually, when I was 7 years old, my dad had taken me to a baseball game, Chicago White Sox, which is why I have White Sox on my lapel. Okay. It's my team, but it's the last place that he took me to. Okay. It was Memorial Day of 1957, and there were a bunch of people over at the house. So my dad took me to White Sox Park to see the Sox play somebody. And after we arrived home that day, a man who was a roomer in our house, who had been staying in the house, and my dad got into a fight, and during the course of the fight, the man pulled out a knife and ran the knife through my dad's skull, his forehead. I'll never forget that day. The blood was just pouring from this man's face, and it's vivid now. I'm 43 years old, and it's as vivid then now as it was then. Okay. I continued to live in the house with this man, and my mother, she forced me to call him Daddy, the man who stabbed my father. And he continued to brutalize her. He didn't go to jail for killing my father.
Was he her boyfriend? Oh, I mean,
that's what it turned out to be.
Okay.
I was only 7 years old, so I couldn't determine that then, but there was an affair going on. And so as a result of that, he continued to live in the house. As a matter of fact, he constantly beat my mother. I had to take off from school on Mondays frequently because I had to rub her down. She had all kind of marks and bruises on her face when she'd wake up in the morning, and I'd have to rub witch hazel. The smell is still vivid in my mind now from back then. Well, that went on for a number of years, and this was on the west side of Chicago. And in 1963, 62 rather, we moved from the west side to Gary, Indiana.
Now that's still the mom and the boyfriend?
That's my mother and this man, yeah. And in the meantime, he had fathered my last two sisters. At the time my dad was killed in '57, I had 5 sisters then. And so the man fathered my last 2 sisters. And so in '62, we moved to Gary, and he moved with us. And Memorial Day of 1963, my mother left, and that was the last time I saw her alive. On that day, he killed her. He cut her up and drove her from Gary to Chicago, and I never saw her alive after that.
So he killed both?
He killed both of them.
Both parents.
They sentenced him to 10 years for killing my mother. He didn't receive any time, as I said, for killing my father.
No, wait. Now, why didn't he receive any time for
my father? Right. Because according to the records, there was no sufficient evidence that he did it in self-defense. Even though that wasn't really what happened, but no one called us kids to testify to what happened.
And then back then, probably the laws wasn't probably the way.
Well, the laws were different. It was because of the fact that the man received only 10 years for killing my mother that I started questioning people about who was responsible for checking into these things, because it didn't seem like it was done right.
Hello, I'm Dr. Naomi Roberson, and I'd like to invite you to tune in to the Naomi Roberson Show every Thursday evening at 8 o'clock p.m. and every Friday morning at 10 a.m. You'll be blessed. If you have an encouraging story that you would like to share on the Naomi Roberson Show, call us at 312-458-9812. The Demons That Divide America is an intense story written by Dr. Naomi Cooper Roberson that tells about the raw, uncut truth concerning racism and greed in America. To find out how you can receive a copy of this book, call us at 312-458-9812. To bring that vision to pass. And we have to get busy. That's why you find some organizations are prospering more than others, because you have to be a visionary to get with a vision. That's just the way it is. And people have to be apt to teach and preach, and apt to be able to get busy and have the strength to do what is necessary to bring this vision to pass. Some organizations have some beautiful outreaches that are going on for the people. I mean, they're feeding people, they're clothing people, but you know the pastor can't do it all by himself or herself, for that matter. It takes people. God sent people to labor in the vineyard. But it's when people start taking their eyes off of Jesus and start looking around and finding things wrong, that the vision is stagnant. Now, in many cases, you'll find, but there are some cases where churches become stagnant.
Our topic today is bondage of man-made traditions, and I'm teaching from a book that I've written, and it's called Saved But Still in Bondage. And a little bit later in the program, I'm going to tell you how you can obtain a copy of this book. But I want to just talk about bondage of man-made traditions, because today, like never before, God wants people free. He didn't save us from bondage to go right back into bondage. And I just want to read a scripture to you. You can find it in Galatians, the 5th chapter, and the 1st verse. And it says, "Stand fast, therefore, in the liberty wherewith Christ has made us free, and be not entangled again with the yoke of bondage." Now, you know, when I see the word again, that tells me that we were tied up before. But when God comes into your life, he sets you free. And you know, for many years, people have taught this man-made tradition because they wanted to look like they were saved. They wanted to feel like they were saved. You know, but it's not in how you look. It's not in how you feel.
If you have an encouraging story that you would like to share on the Naomi Roberson Show, call us at 312-458-9812. That's 312-458-9812. The Demons That Divide America is an intense story written by Dr. Naomi Cooper Roberson that tells about the raw, uncut truth concerning racism and greed in America. To find out how you can receive a copy of this book, call us at 312-458-9812. That's 312-458-9812. Police misconduct, that's your specialty, right? Litigations, you did that for years.
For
right?
almost 10 years, I used to lecture to bar associations across the country on police misconduct litigation, because that was my specialization.
So what do you find? What do you find in all of this?
Let me just say this.
Tell the people.
What I actually over the years, and maybe I should give a little historical perspective, the problem of police violence, the problem of a negative racist police culture is not anything new. Now, this is for Chicago. I worked in the Deep South. I was born and raised in Houston, Texas.
Help me out, the Deep South. What's the Deep?
Houston had the Deep South, Texas, Louisiana, Alabama,
Okay.
Georgia.
Okay.
For a number of years, I actually worked as a civil rights lawyer in Mississippi.
Okay.
And I worked in the South. I worked with police departments. I was involved in litigation, even as a young person. Racism in like the police department is not anything that started in Chicago. Chicago has a culture and a history of it, but in fairness to Chicago, I can tell you, working throughout the South for more than 30 years, is that that same culture was pervasive in police departments throughout the country. Not just in the South, but also throughout the Northeast. California, Los Angeles at one point had a horrible police department for violence and racism. So this is not a problem that's new. It's a problem that has reoccurred because of, in the Chicago instance, in the Chicago situation, violence in the city has become so rampant in the last 2 years, it has become a national phenomenon, and people are wondering why. Many people don't realize this is not a new problem. Chicago in the early 90s had a murder rate higher than it is today.
See, I was always under the impression, and you have to watch what the media feeds you too. We definitely know that, because sometimes we get the stories a little bit twisted, and I don't say all the stations do that, but I always felt that this problem was always there. It's systemic, but it's being exposed now. We got all the technology in the cameras, and now they're talking about the body cams, and when they take a look at it, they see different things. And just like the guy who was on the motorcycle riding his motorcycle, his bike, the police, I don't know if you saw it, but the police threw a cup of coffee, hot coffee in his face, and he had to report that. That's a cop out of control. That's just out of control. And I don't say, you get rid of him, you fire him. You know what? He needs to sit down for a minute. He forgot how this goes. You don't throw that,
What has actually happened is, over the past 2 years, there's been more attention focused on the Chicago Police Department because of the Laquan McDonald shooting.
Right.
Now, and to your viewership, long before Laquan McDonald incidents were happening in the city of Chicago. And there was an element of the police department in doing that. So let's don't believe that the police problem in Chicago started with an officer standing over a young man, 17, 18 years old, and pumping him 16 times with bullets. Chicago's problem goes back to the very beginning of the police department, which goes back to the turn of the century. Remember, this was the home of Al Capone.
Okay.
And at the end of the day, the problem that we see now, you used a very critical term, was systemic. This is nothing new. It's just a different time, and it's different exposure. And thank God for what? Thank God for the cell phone camera. Thank God for the video camera, because what is now come to exposure has always been happening, but there was no way to record it and document it. Post Rodney King out in Los Angeles back in the 1990s. At the end of the day, the racism is being exposed. People are talking about it now more than ever, because it's become a problem that's visual, and social media has been able to magnify these things. There was a time most of the police misconduct cases in Chicago would have never come to public light. Officers would have beat them, killed them, and shot them, and at the end of the day, nothing would have been said. But post, camera and all of what is happening now, we are actually being able to see it. The public is outraged by it, and now we're getting more answers, more investigations, and people are looking back at the systemic history of this, which has brought us to where we are today.
Okay, were you born and raised in Chicago?
No, I was born and raised in a little town out in Texas called Houston.
Okay, so when did you come to Chicago?
I didn't get to Chicago until 1980. I had traveled kind of all over the country. I worked for about 7 years down south in Mississippi as a civil rights lawyer. I worked out in New York City with the National Conference of Black Lawyers. We investigated police crimes across the country from New York City. So I've kind of worked all over. Worked in San Francisco for a minute.
So what was it like when you got to Chicago? What was it like growing up in Chicago?
Well, I didn't grow up here. When I got to Chicago, I was a grown man and a lawyer. I came here to try a case.
Okay, so did you ever have altercations with the police or being stopped?
I mean, at the end of the day, I have not personally, obviously I've been stopped by the police department. I haven't been stopped and harassed like some, but in the community in which I live on the west side of Chicago. I see young men every day, every night, being stopped, frisked, harassed by the Chicago police. I've seen that for years, but it's not anything new. Let me tell you something. When I came up as a boy in Houston, we went through the same thing, and that was back in the late 50s and early 60s. So this stopping and frisking African Americans, it has only taken the visual public light recently, but historically, African Americans from post-slavery time until today have been the subject of, back then it was called slave patrols, today it's called the Chicago Police Department. It's always happened.
So this is nothing new?
Nothing new at all.
Nothing new, it's just different kind of way
young
of
folk
doing it.
see it as new because they weren't around then. I lived in the 60s and the 50s, and I'm a historian as well as a lawyer, and I know the history of this kind of conduct on the part of law enforcement officials.
What do you want to say to African American men, knowing that the problem is here? I don't see it going away too fast. What do you want to say to them so they can, understand? Because some people act like they don't know it exists. It does exist,
It exists. Let me tell you, in Chicago, let's look at some I'm a professor, so let's look at some statistics. I think it was 2014. Between April of 2014 and 2013, between April of 1 year and August, there were 250,000 stops of African American youth in the city of Chicago.
Yes.
Now, let me translate. That's 250,000 of our children and adult black males in about a 6-month period stopped without probable cause, stopped without reasonable suspicion, stopped in violation of their constitutional rights, harassed, and it not only occurred, the police department felt that that was a part of crime fighting. Ironically, they didn't stop white Americans in their communities or in their neighborhoods and do the same thing. So it was really racial, in fact, profiling. Over a period of time, when you see those types of statistics, you realize that there must be a problem. What you don't realize is it's a historical problem. They didn't just start stopping us. They just started keeping track of it. Be very clear. The reason why the 250,000 figure came up, it was only a few years ago that they start keeping track of these types of stops. It was going on before then. That's why the history is there. And so today, when I grow up in a community and I live in an area where I know this is the reality for our youth, this is what people do, this is how the police department conducts itself in the name of crime fighting, I have a natural fear and apprehension that if this is not put in check, something catastrophic, horrific is going to happen.
I know for a fact that our ancestors' slavery made America earn billions of dollars. And it's not their money that we ask for. When you find black people who can't get a job and need some welfare, that's not the white man's money. That was our money that we had stored up anyway. We earned a wealth of money and made billions of corporations and universities rich. Check your history. It's true, okay? But we need to understand, number one, a house divided against itself cannot stand. We can't be divided. We can't let their negativity destroy us as a people. We can't be so that we can't share the things that we have with others if it's going to help them have the knowledge to do good as well. It's just a sin to me that a person will get rich at the expense of making other people poor. And that's what happened with African Americans when slavery was going on. They were making money. We why do we have to eat the leftover garbage that they threw out? You see what I'm saying? We earned whatever we had, and like you said earlier about your book, how we just had very little, you know, and how they just treated us, you know, just the way your aunt was treated in terms of poverty. Sometimes you don't even know when you're poor if you grow up a certain way.
Correct.
And I'm the 7th of 11 children. I didn't know I was poor. You know, and I'm not going to say I was poor. My parents were poor, okay? I'm not poor. But I just thank God for knowledge, and I thank God. I want to reiterate and say that, you know, there are a lot of good cops. They really are. They need to be commended. They really do. But we have to understand that some police have just failed through the cracks, you know. I have policemen in my family, and they're not like that, you know. And I just want us to understand that it's got to stop. It's got to stop somewhere. We have to, it's got to stop. That's it. You can hire another 1,000, but if you don't implement programs and get resource centers and places where kids can go for after school, and you're cutting these programs, so there's no money, you know. But if we can get, you know, where we need to be in terms of, let's do right by everyone in terms of the budgets. And that's where it starts. We still don't have a budget for the state of Illinois, but they're working on it. And why do you have to threaten somebody to make them do right? Okay, I heard where they said if you all don't come up with a budget, the employees won't get paid. That'll make you work, won't it?
Yeah, that might
that'll make
give
you
a
work.
impetus.
But so growing up for you, and I want to end here. Growing up for you was, I guess, pretty much okay, but you still knew some dilemmas was there.
Well, growing up for me was, I want to say, maybe not the usual situation. I was basically given opportunities that many African Americans weren't given. I have been into a situation where I was in all black schools. I have been in mixed schools, and I've been in all white schools. That's a very unique circumstance, because most people, black or white, never get that circumstance at a young age. Generally, if you're white, you stay in a white community, black stays in the black. And I was able to see and compare a lot of things that other people weren't able to see and compare. And I think it all is a matter of one big word, and this is the word that I always carry with me: respect.
I want to talk to you about a book that I've been blessed to write. It's called The Demons That Divide America. And it does have a subtopic. It's called Free Cruise to America, All Expenses Paid. Now, I want you to call me, or you can go to the library and get a copy of this book. This is a must-read novel. It gives you some very important information, and it took me 4 years to write it, but I just think that we kind of got away from some of the things that's been happening to African Americans in this society, in America, period. But I want to take this time to just read you the synopsis, and it says, The Demons That Divide America is an intense story that talks about racism and greed in America. Now, this book was written from a biblical perspective and gives details a powerful story that reveals the raw, uncut truth, okay, about racism in America, and how after years of slavery, you know, many African Americans are still not prospering as they should. Now, this book also creates an awareness for the exploitation of human beings and how American businesses have prospered from free labor and free wealth from banks, corporations, universities, and individuals. Now, it goes on and on. It talks about industrialized racism, systemic racism, and it also recognizes some very prominent African Americans, of course, and I'll just name some of them. President Barack Obama, Reverend Jesse Jackson, Miss Oprah Winfrey, and Mr. Tyler Perry. It also talks about the lynching of the late Emmett Till. Listen, I want you to get a copy of this book. I want you to give me a call. You'll see a number at the end of your program, and you know, you can give us a call, and someone will tell you how you can get your copy of this book. But I just want to take some time to talk about some of the outlines in the chapters that's in the book. Now, the main topic here today is about racism. We just go day to day. We act like it doesn't exist, it doesn't happen, and it's all around us. And you know, actually, I don't know why people can purpose in their mind and just decide that they can hate someone and don't even know them. That's a sickness, okay? And I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. But we have to understand that we're all unique and beautiful and perfectly made, because God did it. We are His creation. And you know, if you like to check your history, I'm talking to the racists right now, if you would like to check some of your history and your lineage and do your family tree, you're going to find out, you'll be surprised what you are mixed with. You know, and I always say we're mixed with beautiful races, all of us. I mean, you can look at me and see there's a lot of diversity there, you know, and I look at people, beautiful people all the time. But we don't want to be proud of who we are, and then someone decided that, hey, you know what, this one is good, that one's bad. If you're not this, you're not good enough. And it's just a sickness. So let me just talk about racism, okay? First of all, racism is a learned behavior. You don't come here being sick. That's my definition of racism, is a person who's sick, and I'll tell you that in a minute. My definition now, I wrote my own definition of racism. Racism is a demon that lives in the heart of a person beyond certain attributes of a human being whose character is less. The character is less than that of a human being, because you have to purpose in your mind just everything you think about a person and why you can hate them and you don't even know them. Now, some of the dictionary definitions are racism is hatred that blinds a person to the point that that person can't see anything but the color of a person's skin. Racism is also hatred of an entire race because of the actions of a few. There's good and bad in every race. And I don't think people talk about this subject enough. They just perform the sickness day to day. And I'm going to give you some areas where racism exists. And a lot of times, some of you all just don't even know that it's going on, but it's there, okay? And then last, racism is an illness. And I always ask the question, are you sick? We need to come to the conclusion that we have to stop punishing people because of their ethnicity. We all came from somewhere in this country, not unless, of course, you're Native American. And that's another whole topic there. If you're not Native American, you are an immigrant. Your family, your people came from somewhere. But people forget that, you know. They're so ready to send the other immigrants back to wherever they come from, but you forget where you come from. And you know what? That's what makes this country so unique and so beautiful. America was built on biblical principles, and it was also built on people from everywhere to make a melting pot. Now, here are some of the areas where racism exists, and I know so well, being an African American, I know it exists in the fact that just unemployment. You know, I've been through so much at my age. I've seen situations where I didn't get hired for a particular job because of who, you know, my color, my ethnicity, but yet someone else of another race, a Caucasian, they were hired, okay, because of the fact of the color of their skin, or no color, okay? Let's keep it real, okay? But, and it's a sad thing, because I already know for a fact that God has blessed me with academic credentials, a lot more than most people could ever have in 2 lifetimes, plus I have the experience. But I always had to take that back seat, or if I did get hired, I had to take less money. So we know about that. That's nothing new. Then when the schools were closed, in other areas, when the schools were closed, they were African American schools and Hispanic schools. Okay, like we don't need to learn. Yes, we do. We're important people. Human beings will always be the most important asset there is on this planet. I hope you enjoyed this special presentation. See you next time.